Good morning, everyone. This is a wonderful opportunity for me and wonderful experience for me to be able to presenting my findings and my research related to economic and finance field. My name is Muhammad Ramaditya Nuriawan, and today I'm going to explain my research and present my research with the title of The Relation Between Exchange Rate Fluctuation and Shareholder Return in Indonesia, Domestic Firms versus Multinational Firms. In short, about my abstract, this study aims to analyze the specific influence of exchange rate exposure on shareholder return, which is conducted on multinational and domestic non-financial companies in the mining and manufacturing sectors from 2016 to 2022 that are listed on Indonesia Stock Exchange, or we call it as IDX. Significant evidence has been discovered indicating that there are both similarities and differences between domestic and multinational companies operating in the mining and manufacturing sectors in Indonesia. These similarities and differences pertain to the influence of exchange rate on the return on asset. When comparing multinational and domestic companies, both are affected by the exchange rate exposure. This study aims to investigate the exchange rate exposure to shareholder return for a multinational corporation or a domestic company that engage in international trade as determined by the research conducted by Dominguez and Tesar in 2006. The study is driven by the continuous expansion of Indonesia domestic and multinational companies. That's why I motivated to be conducting this research, which possess the capacity to make significant contributions to the economy and enhance the existing body of knowledge by identifying the influence of exchange rate to return on assets ROA through the use of regression model, specifically the ordinary least squares model as my main method to research this to analyze this research. The study is analyzed from 2016 to 2022 and consists of 81 companies observed over a period of 7 years, resulting in a total of 581 observations. So my main motivations to conduct this research is to be able to answer my main research question, which is what is the relationship between exchange rate exposure and the shareholder return on the publicly traded non-financial domestic and multinational companies in Indonesia. Uh, During the course of this research, examinations of multiple studies are being analyzed to be used as a point of reference, and then several affirmation research was authored by Dominguez and Tesar in 2006, Fraser and Pansalis in 2003, and Cho and Shen in 1998. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the multiple studies that I use as a point of reference in my research. So the first one is Dominguez and Tesar. Um, their studies I use as a main point of reference in my research because their findings that small companies is exhibit a higher degree of exposure compared to large companies. This is aligned with my hypothesis. That's why I use their studies as my main point of reference in my research. The second one is Fraser and Panzalis in 2004. They use the regression model of Jorian. So their model of their research, which conducted by Jorian regression model, is I use as a point of reference in my model. Because in my research I also use the Jorian regression model to explain and to comprehend my findings. So the Fraser and Panzalis, they use the sample of mining industries and manufacturers in the United States which engage in international trade and activities. This is also the reference of my research because I also analyze about the mining industry and the manufacturers industry. That's why I use Fraser and Panzalis as the point of reference, and then I want to understand that my findings is aligned with their findings or it is different because difference in year, a difference in sample, and that's why I use Fraser and Vangelis as my second point of reference. And also the findings from Fraser and Vangelis is that The majority of the companies in the sample were exposed to fluctuations in exchange rate. The third one is from Zhou and Chen in 1998. They also used Dorian regression model, same as my research that I also used Dorian regression model. Their sample is 171 Japanese multinational companies, and their finding is approximately 25% of a sample comprising 71 Japanese multinational companies experience substantial positive exchange rate exposure. So in short, my main point of reference is Dominguez and Tesar because my main research have the hypothesis that align with Dominguez and Tesar findings. So I want to I want to prove whether their findings is generable in Indonesia sample because they listed companies from 8 countries and there's no Indonesia in it. So I want to recreate their findings, recreate their analysis, and I want to conduct it in Indonesia manufacturing and mining companies, in multinational and domestic companies, and I want to see whether their findings is same as my findings using a different sample. And I also use the Steve Presser and Panzalis because um, their sample is same as my sample, which is the mining and the manufacturers, and but the difference is that their sample is from United States and my sample is from Indonesia. And then again, I want to understand whether their findings is same as my findings. So for the data description, I have 6 variables, which is return on asset as the dependent variables, market capitalization as the control variables, industry status as my control variables, multinational status as my control variables, and also there are foreign sales and exchange rate as my independent variables. So this research followed the study on the exchange rate exposure by Adler and Dumas in 1984. This is my formula of my research, and there are also descriptions about the RIT is the return on asset, and at years T, B0, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5 is part of the formula. And then descriptive statistic. So this is the descriptive statistic. All of the variables have 581 variables, which means that there are no variables that have different observations. And also the correlation matrix shows that there are no variables that have a high correlation, which means that my sample of my observations and my variables, there are no high correlations between every variables. So this is the methodology. I want to explain my hypothesis in my research. There are 5 hypotheses that I want to prove. The first one is My first hypothesis is that exchange rate exposure is positively correlated to return on asset. The second hypothesis is that foreign sales is positively related to return on asset. The third hypothesis is firm size is positively related to return on asset. And the fourth one is multinational status is negatively related to return on asset. And the last hypothesis is industry status is positively related to return on asset. So the next one is I'm going to explain about my variable in short. My dependent variables, which is ROA, return on asset, is determined by dividing the operating income of the company by its total asset. This formula is presented by Barnett and Solomon in 2012 and also King and Santor in 2008. The next variable is my independent variables. I have 2 independent variables. The first one is exchange rate. These variables represent the IDR, which is Indonesian rupiah, the exchange rate of Indonesian, and United States dollar, which is the exchange rate of United States. And the exchange rate was determined by calculating the difference between the spot rate, which is the rate in the early year, and the rate in the end of year. And the third variable of is foreign sales, which is my second independent variable. This variable is the percentage of total overseas sales of the company total sales. I found it from their company financial report, and I also have it from the IDX source. And also the third one is control variable. I have three control variables, which is the first one is firm size. Uh, Firm size, I use market capitalization as a measure of a firm size, and multinational status. According to Madura, multinational companies are companies engaged in multiple international business activities. And also the last one is industry status. Uh, Industrial status is this research indicated by dummy variables of 1 and 0. A value of 1 represent companies included in NICS 2071 and the primary cost of 31, and the value of 0 represent the mining companies. So the result is that the goodness of it, the model 1 R squared value shows 6.68 variability, while in model 2 the R squared value shows 23.84 variability, which means that the model 2 has a better explanation of the variable compared to the first model. And here are the discussions of my findings. The first hypothesis is that exchange rate exposure is positively related to return on asset, and I have to reject the hypothesis because I found it that an additional factor that might account for this is the fact that the majority of the companies included in this research may be vulnerable to transaction risk. Therefore, by converting their foreign earning to local currency with Indonesia rupiah to measure their return on asset, the value will increase. I think this is my explanations why I reject the hypothesis, and also the regression result as uh, my one of my tools to be able to prove the hypothesis. And the second one is the second hypothesis. I have to accept the hypothesis, and the explanation of this is indicates that a company will gain a greater currency exposure and experience a higher return on asset as its foreign sales increase. The third hypothesis, we have to accept the hypothesis because, and the explanation is that this hypothesis suggests that the bigger the firm size, the more exchange rate exposure and the return on asset that the company will receive. The fourth one is multinational status is negatively related to return on asset, and I have to accept the hypothesis because the regression results shows that the multinational status is negatively related with the dependent variable, and this indicates that both domestic and multinational companies face the same risk from exchange rate exposure. The five hypothesis is industry status is positively related to return on asset, and I have to accept this hypothesis because if we look at the regression result in the model 2, the score is positive 2.18, which means that they have positively related with the dependent variable, and this indicates manufacturing companies have a positive impact in higher return on asset compared to mining companies. So in short, I'm going to explain about how do I accept and reject the hypothesis. If we look into the regression result, we have to accept the hypothesis. We have to accept the hypothesis if if the parenthesis is statistically significant and my hypothesis is aligned with the regression result that I found. And here are the conclusion of my research. The study is conducted using the OLS regression model. The result shows return on assets are influenced by exchange rate and foreign sales in mining and manufacturing industries for multinational and domestic company in Indonesia. The second one is manufacturing company is more influenced by the exchange rate and foreign sales, which positively correlated with the return on asset. The higher the foreign sales and the exchange rate will beneficial for manufacturing companies compared to mining companies. The third one is the bigger the size of the firm, their return on asset is more vulnerable with exchange rate. And the last one is both domestic and multinational companies have the same risk from fluctuation of exchange rate. And thank you for listening my presentations. I hope my findings can be able to beneficial for a lot of people. And thank you.